Hello, good people. This is Duncan with Free as an Eagle. Just talking to you late on a Friday afternoon. I wanted to just take a few minutes to get you caught up on things. Needless to say, I'm exhausted. My brother Al and I have been working together all week. Not real long days because of the heat, but as long as we can work, and then taking off to the lake for a nice swim. So between this and that, sleeping very well. A little achy and a little sore, but this is coming along really well, and I'm very pleased. I'll give you a little bit of detail on what we've done so far. I might have covered some of this previously, so I'll try not to repeat myself too much. But anyway, so you're looking at a little over half the rafters are up now. They're a little shy of 28 feet long, and the center I measured down to about a little over 24 feet high to the peak, which is kind of what I was hoping for. I thought it'd be a little higher, but by the time you cut a rafter and cut both ends of it, you cut a little off, you want to leave a little slack. Sometimes you get a bad end here or there, but generally this lumber yard, the lumber they sent for the floor system was not totally up to par. They sent me some wood that looked like it was the pile that everybody rejected, and I had to pick through it and send some back. So I really told them these rafters are 28-foot pieces of 2x12, really had to be good. So, and they came through. Harrington's lumber down in Hillsdale, New York, which is over an hour away. They were willing to ship it up here. They're the only locals that had 2x12s. The only thing you could get 28 feet long was these Doug fir beams, I'll call them. And so they came through. They delivered them, and Al and I worked out a nice pattern. He came through with, we sort of combined, and I'd say in contracting we have about 75 years of combined experience. We've been done it a long time. So he came up with several innovative ideas. One of which was, you see at the top where those rafters meet, there's a space there, and we actually cut them so that space later would become the place where the ridge goes. We're going to have a double 2x12 ridge, which is extreme overkill, but this whole project is overkill, so we don't want to break the tradition. And what's funny, you'll see the ridge up there that's in place, and it's a floating ridge right now, just for the sake of giving something for these to bang into when we bring them up and to tie into temporarily. But that's not even connected in any way, and we're sliding it along as we go so that will go all the way to the other end, and we'll take it down, and then we'll put in a ridge that's made of two of what the rafters are made of. Actually, there'll be 3 or 4 of them, because we got to cover 46 feet to include a 2-foot overhang on this end facing the driveway, and an 8-foot overhang on the other end, which is going to go out over the deck, which if I can zoom this down, okay, so out on the end of this you can see the deck, which is 8 by 18 feet, and for reasons I'll explain later, the overhang is going to come down and eventually would hit the railings on either end, so I didn't want to go 24 feet out. It would have created a collision point, so I tried to eliminate that. So anyway, details, there's a lot of bracing in there. I'll explain in a minute. I want to point out a detail. Al came up with that detail for the top, for the ridge to sit in, and then I actually came up with this idea, which I was kind of proud of. Let's see if I can get in here with this. And what I did is, I realized the end of a 2x12 cut at this angle has a pretty wide footprint, and the ridge is a 2x8, which is a pretty big piece of wood. So I cut the notch deliberately. Okay, this is a little awkward to get in here, but you can kind of see there's a little piece of that bottom of the rafter that tucks in, and when we're installing it, it's very handy. That jams it against the ridge, or against this base plate, and prevents it from going too far out and getting away from you. And then this tail represents an overhang, and eventually you'll see cement board over foam. We're going to fill in the gaps between the rafters with foam board, and then probably we'll make some kind of a ripped down 2x4 board that will go against the tail of that rafter into the cement board, so the whole thing will be completely sealed off, which it basically already is with caulking. And then on the inside, this was very key as far as having this thing structurally correct, because when you go to put plywood on, if you didn't do a good job with your rafters and then things aren't plumb and straight, you're going to have a real problem with nailing your plywood, not running into issues on the ends. So what you see inside this, is X bracing, which is absolutely necessary to hold things true and they won't rack. Because I've seen some of those horrible fail videos. Speaking of failing, I saw my finger just appear. Some of those terrible fail videos in construction show buildings that weren't properly braced and they got hit with a storm, or just because they weren't properly braced, they literally fell over, and then you've got a pile of matchsticks, pile of wrecked wood, and you might have to take it all apart, like pick up sticks and try and rebuild it, which is embarrassing and expensive. So anyway, so the first thing we did is we had that staging all the way at this end, and then we built the outermost. We put 2 rafters and actually attached them to the staging so they'd have something to hang on to, and then we went down the other end of the staging when it was down on this end, did the same thing, and then that gave us 2 pairs of rafters. And you can see, okay, if I get under here, I'll zoom them in. There's a little gusset blocks that you can see up there. So those link the ends of the rafters. They were sitting against the ridge up there. And then, because the ridge is going to be moved along, we put these gussets there that would support the ridge, and they link the 2 rafters. Now the rafters push against each other, which stabilizes them, and at the bottom they're tied in. So the remaining element is to brace them, because a triangle is very rigid. So triangulation is the tactic you use for bracing in general. And an A is a triangle, so it's stable the side-to-side way. The front-to-back way, the thing would fall over without the bracing. And it's also critical that you get it absolutely plumb up and down in order to, when you go to install plywood or build a wall under it, which there'll be an end wall under each end eventually with doors and windows. It's key that these things are plumb, or when you go to use your level to install a door or window, things are wrong and if the wall leans out. And I've seen this, it really makes it hard to correct for. So anyway, you see what we did is hung a plumb line off the top, a string with a weight, and let it hang all the way down to the floor. And then we had a string that went across the bottoms of those 2 rafters, and we tweaked it in and out until the plumb bob was right in line with that string, and we knew it was perfectly plumb up and down. And then at that point we braced it, and then we had to disassemble the staging to get it out once we had the bracing on both sides. And then we had a freestanding structure of about 4 or 5 rafters on each side, and then we could safely move the staging. So what we did is, there's 2 things that went on here. One, we grabbed wood and we braced so these X's create triangulation so that nothing can move. And then what you see above that, so these are layout boards, and you can see, lighting's a little squirrely here, but what happens is, so we got a lot of X bracing. You can see X bracing at the low level, at the high level, and then up higher there's various braces there. But one thing that's very key, I'm going to try and climb up here if I don't trip. Okay, so I'm up here, and you can see this 2x4 is horizontal. It's screwed in, and then as you come over, these are on 24-inch centers. So because these beams are so big and we're using 5/8 plywood on a steep pitch, we can get away with going 24 on center using fewer rafters because they're so big. So anyway, you'll see these layout marks. Basically, now we put those on this wood when it was laying down on a bench, so we set up these layout boards, and the idea being now we can keep all these rafters in parallel so that we'll carry it. And we checked, like we hung the plumb bob down recently just to verify we weren't going off layout, because you'd be surprised how many mistakes you can easily make, because we had marks on here for dormers and various things that are going to be built later. Right now all we wanted to do is get these rafters down and locked in. It's funny, you'll see some really dark marks there. So I made a mistake of using some old non-galvanized nails just to use them up to nail these bottom wall plates in. And of course it rained, and this Doug fir has a lot of tannins in it, so it reacted with the steel, so it looks kind of ugly, but that eventually won't be exposed to water, so it'll dry out and go away. So anyway, so here's a bunch of staging we set up, and this whole process is very tedious and time consuming because everything you do in the heat, and especially at a height, has to be done very carefully and very slowly, and if somebody gets hurt on a job, then it kind of ruins it. So, we're old enough and averse enough to getting banged up now that we really, we're willing to take great pains to take our time and make sure everything is done as safely as possible. There's always still a risk factor, but we can reduce it by being careful. One thing I will mention, we might have already covered, but I want to zoom on this. This is one of my brother Al's ingenious technologies that dates back to ancient Greece and Rome. It's a very simple thing and yet very effective. It's called block and tackle, or the use of pulleys and ropes. He hung this up on this for now, so because we're going to be actually taking a little vacation, won't be here to work for a few days. So this little, I'll see if I can show you this little invention, if I can get to it. Okay, I'll just sort of zoom on it like this. So you'll see some pulleys in this little box. Al built that little box around it, and what happens is these ropes go through this whole system, and if you have a rope go back and forth to the point where you have 4 pulleys involved, then you pull 1 foot on the one end of the rope, and or say you pull 4 feet on the rope, the other end of it will only go up 1 foot because you're going through all these 4 different pulleys. So it's spreading the load out. The only way we could possibly handle the weight of these things, which is like 150, 160 pounds for these rafters, is to have them on a block and tackle arrangement that gives you a mechanical advantage. So the benefit of that system is we were able to pull these up one at a time and have one guy pulling up on the thing and another guy up on the staging, and he would make sure the top landed where it was supposed to against the ridge, and then the bottom guy would guide this in. And by the grace of God, the first pattern was actually worked out perfectly and allowed all these to be made, and very carefully, so that each one would engage with that little foot sliding out and catching. Then we put some screws in that, and so as we go along, this whole thing is being kept plumb and even spacing. And then we go to do plywood. The plywood itself is going to ultimately brace this entire structure from the outside. So once the plywood is on there and nailed well, it forms millions of triangles, so the whole thing becomes very rigid and won't bend or move. And then all the interior bracing will come off, and then eventually a lot of it will become wood for the interior walls and knee walls and the like. So anyway, so this has been a really physically busy, hot, but very productive, killer week. I've been waking up every morning aching and badly in need of coffee and ibuprofen, but by the mercy of God, we've gotten this far, and I'm really excited about it, really happy, because we're over the halfway point with the rafters. We get down the other end, it's going to be a little complicated because the top's going to have an 8-foot overhang out over the deck, and the bottom will be 2 feet out, so that'll create a nice little sun protection. It's kind of being done for solar reasons. Winter light can get in, summer sun not so much. This end is facing north, so this will be not the, it'll be a different kind of a view, but I'll give you a little preview. As we're looking at how tall this thing is, it's actually 24 feet high, so we came up with we keep changing the plans as we go because options pop up we weren't aware of. So there's going to be a second floor with a bedroom on this end, open balcony on the other end, and then the coolest thing is there's actually enough room that above the bedroom there's going to be room for a really cool little loft that'll be about 6 feet up. Be a little bitty loft with a ladder. We're going to put a triangle window in the top, and then this is a north-facing side, so out of that little loft will be a north-facing window, and it opens up. Right now there's clouds up there, but there's this beautiful opening toward the driveway side in the sky where we'll be able to see the northern sky at night and see stars and all kinds of stuff. So that's kind of making this even cooler than anticipated. So anyway, hope you enjoy what I'm sharing with you. I have a tendency to want to teach, so some people that are watching these videos know more than I do, and if you do, great, share with me what you know, and if you can learn a little from what I'm sharing about what we're doing, then good, more power to you. I hope it benefits you. Anyway, so I'll let you go, and we'll see you in a week or so, and we'll be moving forward with this, so I'll keep you on top of it. Thanks.